Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now. The Cleveland Browns are drowning in the most explosive and disturbing controversy to rock the NFL this season, and what I'm about to reveal will shake your faith in professional football to its absolute core. This isn't another story about blown assignments or communication breakdowns that happen in the normal flow of a game. This isn't about rookie growing pains or the typical struggles young players face when adjusting to the speed and complexity of the professional level. What we're witnessing unfold in Cleveland is something far more sinister, something that cuts to the very heart of what it means to be a teammate, to have someone's back, to sacrifice for the greater good of the organization. Right now, at this very moment, viral footage is circulating across every corner of the internet, showing what appears to be Cleveland Browns offensive linemen deliberately and systematically abandoning their rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders in the most critical moments imaginable, leaving him exposed to brutal punishment from defenders who come crashing through untouched like they're running through a practice dummy drill. The evidence is damning beyond comprehension. The implications are absolutely staggering. And the deafening silence from the Browns organization speaks volumes about what might really be happening behind closed doors in that facility. Millions of football fans across the country have now seen this footage, and the reactions range from complete shock to absolute outrage. People are asking questions that strike at the fundamental integrity of the game. Former players are weighing in with barely concealed disgust. Analysts who have covered the NFL for decades are struggling to find explanations that make any logical sense. And Shedeur Sanders, the talented rookie quarterback who came into this league with sky-high expectations and the weight of his legendary father's legacy on his shoulders, is caught in the middle of a nightmare scenario that no young player should ever have to endure. Let me take you inside this explosive story from the very beginning, because the details matter enormously, and the full context makes this situation even more disturbing than the viral clips alone would suggest. For weeks now, whispers have been circulating throughout NFL circles, quiet conversations happening in press boxes and film rooms across the league. Veteran observers who have watched thousands of football games, dedicated film analysts who break down every snap looking for competitive advantages, and hardcore fans who study the game with obsessive intensity have all been noticing something deeply peculiar about the Cleveland Browns' offensive line play, particularly when Shedeur Sanders is under center taking snaps. We're not talking about wild conspiracy theories cooked up by basement-dwelling internet trolls looking for clicks and attention. We're talking about legitimate film evidence that has even the most skeptical and measured analysts raising their eyebrows, scratching their heads, and asking uncomfortable questions they never thought they'd have to ask about professional athletes at the highest level of their sport. The footage that has now gone absolutely viral comes from a recent Browns game, and when you actually watch it with your own eyes, you'll immediately understand why it's causing such an unprecedented uproar across the football world. A TikTok user going by the handle W. Thatcher was doing what thousands of dedicated football fans do every single week during the NFL season. He was breaking down game film, rewinding plays, studying formations and techniques, looking for insights and hidden details that casual viewers might miss. But what he discovered on this particular fourth down play was something nobody in their right mind expected to find, something so bizarre and inexplicable that it demanded immediate attention and deeper investigation. The clip was then shared by Gucci on Twitter, a prominent and respected voice in the football community who has built a substantial following by calling out questionable plays and holding players accountable when their performance doesn't meet professional standards. And from there, the footage exploded across every social media platform imaginable, spreading like wildfire through the interconnected world of sports discussion. Within hours, it had been viewed millions of times, shared countless thousands of times, and generated comment sections absolutely overflowing with shocked fans who simply could not believe what they were witnessing with their own eyes. So let's break down exactly what happened on this play in excruciating detail, because every single element of this disaster matters when trying to understand the full scope of what might be going on here. The Browns lined up for a crucial 4th and 1 situation, one of the most fundamental and defining moments in all of football. This is the game at its most basic, primal level, stripped down to pure physical competition. You need exactly 1 yard, just 36 inches, the distance from your fingertips to your shoulder, roughly the length of a standard ruler. In the National Football League, with professional athletes who have trained their entire lives for moments exactly like this, who have spent thousands of hours in weight rooms building strength and in film rooms studying techniques, converting 4th and 1 should be almost automatic, especially when you've got millions upon millions of dollars worth of offensive line talent standing between your quarterback and the opposing defense. This is where champions are made, where physicality wins the day, where offensive lines prove their worth and impose their will. But what happened on this particular snap, on this crucial moment that should have been straightforward and routine, has veteran coaches literally shaking their heads in complete disbelief when they watch the film. Right tackle Jack Conklin, a player who has been in the NFL long enough to know infinitely better, who has played thousands of professional snaps and should be able to execute basic fundamentals in his sleep, does something that defies all logic and football sense. Instead of engaging with the defender lined up directly in front of him, instead of using his massive size advantage and professional strength to create even the slightest push at the line of scrimmage, Conklin essentially launches himself through the air like he's auditioning for a Superman movie or attempting to set the world record for the long jump. I'm genuinely not exaggerating here for dramatic effect or trying to make this sound worse than it actually is. The man literally leaves his feet completely and flies past his assignment, leaving the defensive player totally unblocked with a clear, wide-open path directly into the backfield where Sanders is standing vulnerable and exposed. Now you might be thinking to yourself, okay, maybe that was just a catastrophic blown assignment, a mental error that happens occasionally even to veteran players. Maybe Conklin thought he was supposed to release to the second level and block a linebacker. Maybe there was some miscommunication at the line of scrimmage where Sanders called one protection, but the offensive line heard something different. These kinds of things do happen in football from time to time, right? Players occasionally get confused, especially when defenses show complex looks and disguise their intentions. But hold on just a moment, because we're just getting started with this absolute disaster of a play, and it somehow manages to get even worse from here. Before Jack Conklin even makes his infamous Superman impression that will live forever on the internet, there's a clear and obvious false start violation in the backfield that somehow, inexplicably, mysteriously doesn't get flagged by the officials who are supposedly watching for exactly these kinds of infractions. A player gets set in motion illegally, moving before the snap in a way that should draw an immediate penalty. But the referees apparently made the collective decision to keep their flags firmly planted in their pockets for this particular violation. Now, officiating errors and missed calls happen in literally every NFL game, and fans complain about them constantly regardless of which team they support. But in this specific case, the missed false start is really just the appetizer, the opening act before the main event of complete dysfunction that's about to unfold before our eyes. If Jack Conklin's utterly inexplicable decision to block absolutely nobody, to essentially remove himself from the play entirely, wasn't already bad enough to doom this 4th down attempt, what happens next takes this from merely terrible to absolutely catastrophic and potentially criminal from a football perspective. Joel Bitonio, the veteran leader of this entire offensive line unit, the player who's supposed to set the tone and standard for everyone else in the group, the guy who makes statements to the media and positions himself as the quarterback of the offensive line, the voice of authority and experience, proceeds to completely and totally whiff on his own assignment in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. And I want to be crystal clear here. I'm not talking about getting beaten by a superior defensive technique or losing a hard-fought one-on-one battle to a dominant defensive tackle who simply made a great play. Joel Bitonio literally falls to the ground, collapsing like his legs have been swept out from under him by an invisible force, without making any meaningful contact with anyone. It's like watching someone slip on a banana peel in an old slapstick comedy routine, except this is the National Football League where millions of dollars are on the line, where careers are made and destroyed, where every single play is captured from multiple camera angles in crystal clear high definition for the entire world to analyze and judge. The inevitable and predictable result of this absolute comedy of errors, or perhaps more accurately, this tragedy of what increasingly looks like deliberate sabotage, is that two defenders come crashing through the line of scrimmage completely untouched, meeting zero resistance whatsoever. The play never had even the slightest chance of success from the moment the ball was snapped. Shedeur Sanders, who's already dealing with enormous pressure and crushing expectations as a rookie quarterback trying to prove himself and establish his credentials in the most competitive and unforgiving sports league on the entire planet, gets absolutely swarmed by defenders before he can even begin to think about moving the chains forward or making something positive happen. The Browns turn the ball over on downs, yet another opportunity slips through their fingers like sand in an hourglass, and Sanders is left standing there wondering what exactly he needs to do, what he possibly could have done differently, to get even basic fundamental protection from the teammates who are supposedly there to support him. Now, here's where this story transitions from merely troubling and frustrating to genuinely disturbing and potentially scandalous in ways that could have massive implications for the entire organization. This absolutely is not an isolated incident that we can dismiss as a one-time fluke. This isn't just one catastrophically bad play that we can write off as an anomaly in an otherwise acceptable body of work. Over the past several weeks, footage has been steadily and consistently emerging that shows a clear, undeniable, and deeply troubling pattern of highly questionable offensive line play. And crucially, this pattern seems to manifest specifically and primarily when Shedeur Sanders is on the field taking snaps. Dedicated fans who spend their free time studying game film have documented multiple instances of offensive linemen appearing to deliberately miss their assignments in ways that seem almost impossible for professional players. There have been numerous plays where Browns blockers seem to engage their own teammates instead of the opposing defenders they're actually supposed to be blocking. We've witnessed a level of systematic dysfunction and coordinated breakdown that goes far, far beyond simple mistakes. Occasional miscommunication or temporary lack of chemistry between players who are still developing cohesion as a unit. Think carefully about what this means from the perspective of a rookie quarterback who's trying desperately to establish himself and build a foundation for a long, successful career in the NFL. Shedeur Sanders entered this league carrying enormous expectations that would crush most young players under their weight. He's the son of Deion Sanders, one of the most electrifying, charismatic, and legendary players in the entire history of professional football. He's got the pedigree and bloodlines that open doors but also create impossible standards. He's got legitimate arm talent that NFL scouts drooled over. He's got football intelligence and instincts that you simply cannot teach. He's got the work ethic and dedication to be great. But absolutely none of that matters even slightly. None of his preparation or natural ability makes even the smallest difference if the 5 enormous human beings who are paid millions upon millions of dollars specifically to protect him, to give him time to operate, to create a clean pocket where he can stand tall and go through his progressions, are either completely and inexcusably incompetent or, as a rapidly growing number of people are now openly suggesting and seriously considering, intentionally and deliberately undermining his success for reasons that remain unclear and deeply troubling. Joel Bitonio deserves special attention and scrutiny in this entire conversation because of the specific role he's carved out for himself within the Browns organization and the leadership position he claims to occupy. He's been very deliberately positioned and has positioned himself as the unquestioned leader of this offensive line unit. He's the veteran voice, the player who speaks to the media on behalf of the entire group, The guy who's explicitly supposed to set the standard both on the field during games and off the field in the locker room and practice facility. He's the one who's been making public statements, trying to control the narrative and shape public perception of what's happening with this unit. He essentially functions as the quarterback of the offensive line, the player who's responsible for making crucial protection calls at the line of scrimmage, identifying defensive fronts and potential blitzers, and ensuring that everyone is on the same page and executing the game plan. But when you actually sit down and watch the film carefully, when you see him literally falling to the ground on crucial plays without making any apparent effort whatsoever to block anyone or fulfill his basic fundamental responsibility, it raises profoundly serious questions about his leadership, his commitment, his accountability, and most importantly, what's really happening behind closed doors, inside that Cleveland Browns facility where cameras aren't allowed and the public can't see. The timing of this entire ugly situation couldn't possibly be worse for the Cleveland organization or more damaging to their hopes for the future. This is a franchise that has struggled and suffered and endured heartbreak for literal decades trying to find any semblance of stability, consistency, or competence at the quarterback position. They've cycled through more signal callers than most fans can even keep track of without consulting historical records or reference materials. The depressing list of quarterbacks who have started games for the Browns over the past 2 decades reads like a who's who of NFL disappointments, failed experiments, dashed hopes, and cautionary tales about what happens when organizations don't have a plan. They finally seem to have potentially found some genuine hope and legitimate potential in Sanders, a young quarterback with real NFL talent and significant upside who could conceivably be the long-term answer they've been desperately and frantically searching for since they returned to the league as an expansion franchise. And now, just as things seem to be looking up, they're dealing with this massive offensive line controversy that threatens to completely and utterly derail everything, to destroy all hope and progress before the Sanders era even has a proper chance to begin and develop. How is a rookie quarterback supposed to develop the complex skills and refined instincts that are absolutely necessary to succeed and thrive in the NFL? How is he supposed to gain the confidence and self-belief required to make tight window throws in crucial pressure-packed situations? How is he supposed to learn to read increasingly complex defenses, work efficiently through his progressions, develop chemistry with receivers, and make the kind of lightning-quick decisions under pressure that separate adequate quarterbacks from truly great ones, when he fundamentally cannot trust the 5 massive guys standing directly in front of him? When he knows with certainty that at any given moment, on any given play, one or more of his offensive linemen might simply abandon their assignments for reasons unknown, leaving him completely exposed and vulnerable to incoming pass rushers who are actively trying to separate his head from his shoulders and end his career? The severe psychological damage this kind of toxic environment can inflict on a young, developing quarterback cannot possibly be overstated or emphasized enough. This is precisely and exactly how promising careers get derailed and destroyed before they ever really have a chance to properly begin. The stark and striking contrast between what Shedeur Sanders is experiencing and what other rookie quarterbacks around the league are dealing with this season is both illuminating and deeply troubling. Take Cam Ward, for instance, who was drafted by another organization and has been navigating his own set of typical rookie challenges and adjustments. Ward recently spoke candidly to the media about his season so far, his relationship with Shedeur Sanders, and the normal difficulties and obstacles that come with navigating life as a first-year NFL quarterback trying to find his footing. His thoughtful comments provide absolutely fascinating insight into what the rookie quarterback experience should look like under ordinary normal circumstances, and they highlight in stark relief just how dramatically different and potentially toxic Sanders' specific situation might actually be compared to what other rookies are experiencing. When asked directly about his connection and chemistry with his receivers and what specific aspects of his game need the most improvement moving forward, Cam Ward talked about all the usual things you'd expect to hear from a developing quarterback who's being honest about his weaknesses. He discussed the critical importance of extensive film study, the necessity of putting the ball in better positions where his receivers can make plays after the catch, the ongoing work required to improve timing on certain route concepts, and all the completely normal growing pains that literally every rookie quarterback experiences regardless of their talent level or draft position. These are exactly the kinds of challenges you anticipate and accept as an inevitable part of the development process. Timing issues with receivers who you're still building chemistry and trust with, learning to read and react to the more complex and well-disguised defensive schemes you face in the NFL compared to college, adjusting mentally and physically to the dramatically increased speed at which the professional game is played. These are significant challenges without question, but they're ultimately surmountable obstacles that can and will be overcome with dedicated hard work, quality coaching, organizational support, and time to develop and mature. But when Cam Ward was specifically asked about Shedeur Sanders and whether he sees meaningful similarities in how they've both had to navigate adversity and obstacles in their respective rookie seasons, his carefully worded answer was measured, diplomatic, and perhaps far more revealing than he even consciously intended it to be. Ward acknowledged diplomatically that every rookie's journey is inherently and fundamentally different, that the experience varies dramatically depending on countless variables, including your specific situation, your organization's culture and stability, your supporting cast of teammates, and innumerable other factors both visible and invisible. He talked about the importance of taking it week to week, not getting too emotionally high after victories or too devastatingly low after defeats, maintaining an even psychological keel regardless of external circumstances. But then he said something that really stands out and resonates when you read carefully between the lines of his diplomatic language. He explicitly stated that he genuinely doesn't know what's going on inside Cleveland's building. He doesn't have any real insight into what Sanders has to deal with on a daily basis, both inside the facility during practices and team meetings and outside of it in terms of media scrutiny and intense public pressure. That's an incredibly diplomatic and carefully calibrated way of acknowledging that Ward clearly recognizes and understands that Sanders might be dealing with challenges and obstacles that go far, far beyond the normal, typical rookie struggles that every first-year quarterback faces regardless of circumstance. It's a thoughtfully worded statement that allows Ward to express support and solidarity with his fellow rookie without directly criticizing the Browns organization, making inflammatory accusations he can't personally substantiate, or creating unnecessary controversy that might blow back on him. Ward went on to describe his personal relationship with Sanders as solid and genuine, noting that they spoke at the very start of the season when they were both beginning their NFL journeys together, and that they remain there for each other, providing mutual support even though the absolutely demanding and exhausting NFL schedule makes regular communication difficult when you're simply trying to survive and prepare from week to week. He talked about feeling blessed and fortunate to play the game healthy and to get out of games healthy without serious injury, a seemingly innocent comment that actually takes on additional and somewhat ominous meaning when you consider the context that Sanders is playing behind an offensive line that increasingly appears to be leaving him completely exposed to brutal punishment on a weekly basis. Perhaps the most telling and thought-provoking part of Ward's entire media session came when he was asked specifically about the draft process and how it unfolded for Sanders, who continuously and surprisingly dropped further and further than virtually anyone expected, despite being universally regarded as one of the very top quarterback prospects in the entire draft class. Ward's response was carefully measured and diplomatically thoughtful, exactly as you'd expect from a young player who understands that absolutely everything he says will be analyzed, dissected, and potentially taken out of context by media members looking for storylines. He talked philosophically about everything happening for a reason, about maintaining faith that God has a plan even when circumstances don't make immediate, obvious sense, about the critical importance of proving yourself right every single time you step on the field regardless of where you were selected or what doubters and critics might say about your abilities. But there was a subtle underlying acknowledgement in his carefully chosen words that Sanders's draft day experience, falling considerably and unexpectedly further than virtually all projections suggested, might well have been indicative of legitimate concerns that NFL teams and their front offices had about either his situation, his fit within certain specific organizational structures and cultures, or other factors that weren't immediately obvious or visible to fans and media members watching the draft unfold on television.